Right now, I mean, if you've looked at any tech news lately, you know that billions of dollars are moving at just like light speed into artificial intelligence
Oh,
startups.
yeah. It's everywhere.
Yeah, and half of these companies, they don't even have a sustainable product yet, or or even a single paying customer in some cases.
Right. It's wild.
And as standard Western economists, like they look at this landscape, they see the staggering valuations, and they immediately diagnose it as, an AI bubble.
A bubble that is inevitably going to pop.
Exactly. But what if we're applying like the completely wrong diagnostic framework to treat the patient here?
That's a great question.
Today, we are looking through a totally different cultural lens. We're unpacking a specific linguistic and, well, conceptual framework that's used in Chinese tech media to describe this exact same investment boom.
Which honestly, it fundamentally rewrites how we should be evaluating risk in the tech sector right now. Yeah, this analysis of Chinese commercial narratives, it provides a framework that is much more organic and honestly far more nuanced than our standard Western economic models.
I'm super excited for this because we're going to deconstruct this brilliant cultural metaphor to basically rethink our entire concept of an economic bubble.
It's going to change the timeline of when we should actually be worried about market hype.
Right. And by the end of this deep dive, you, the listener, are going to walk away with some very specific, practical, critical thinking tools to, spot the real substance from the dangerous hype in AI.
And to understand the modern tech market through this lens, we actually have to step away from finance entirely for a second.
Wait, step away from finance.
Yeah, we have to look at the anatomy of a medical concept.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So Chinese business media has adopted a very specific term to diagnose the current AI boom, and the term is Xūhuǒ.
Xūhuǒ.
Right, and translated into English, it literally means false heat.
False heat. Wow, okay, so let's break down the mechanics of that phrase because the imagery there tells a very different story than, a soap bubble getting bigger.
Exactly. So the first character is Xu, and in this context, it translates to empty or deficient.
Okay.
Unsubstantiated, lacking a foundation.
Oh, I see.
So you can visualize this massive, towering skyscraper that looks incredibly imposing from a distance.
Right.
But as you get closer, you realize there are literally no load-bearing pillars underneath it. It's just structurally hollow.
Yeah, it's slightly terrifying. So the foundation is fundamentally missing.
Completely.
And then what's the second half of the diagnosis?
The second character is Xūhuǒ, which translates to fire or heat, or like a frenzy.
Okay, so put them together and you get empty fire.
Right.
Or false heat.
Right, and the source analysis traces this directly back to traditional Chinese medicine,
Right.
where it describes a very specific and deceptive physiological state in a patient.
Applying an ancient medical diagnosis to like Silicon Valley venture capital is just a fascinating crossover to me.
Well, it works beautifully because of how traditional Chinese medicine approaches systemic balance,
Right.
False heat describes a false fever that's caused by a condition called yin deficiency.
Yin deficiency. Okay, break that down for us.
So imagine observing a patient in a clinic. Their face is flushed red. Their skin is radiating heat. Their pulse is just racing.
Okay.
A superficial glance, like from an untrained eye, might lead you to conclude that their metabolism is roaring. Like they're full of this fiery, robust vitality.
Right, they look like they're just running hot and energetic.
Exactly. But the elevated temperature is actually masking a severe internal crisis.
Oh, wow.
The heat is a glaring symptom of profound weakness. Their body's internal balance is completely derailed.
So not a good heat.
No, in this framework, the heat manifests because the foundational cooling, grounding energy, the yin, is severely depleted.
Got it.
The body is effectively burning itself up to maintain basic functions because it lacks the foundational reserves to operate normally.
That makes so much sense. Like, think about someone who has stayed awake for like 3 days straight working on a high-stakes project.
Oh, yeah.
And they're surviving entirely on espresso and energy drinks.
We've all been there.
Right. And if you observe them in a meeting, they appear incredibly wired. They're talking super fast, pacing the room, projecting this intense, fiery productivity.
But if you look past the adrenaline...
Exactly. You realize their immune system is quietly crashing.
Right.
Their cognitive function is actually super impaired, and their adrenal glands are completely tapped out.
They are running on absolute empty.
Yeah. Despite the frantic outward appearance of boundless energy, they're systematically destroying their own health.
The outward hyperactivity is just a survival mechanism. It's masking the structural collapse. The heat is real, but the health is fake.
Man. When you take that physiological breakdown, the adrenaline masking the systemic failure, and you apply it to what we are seeing in the global tech ecosystem right now.
The parallels are uncomfortable.
They really are. We're seeing a lot of tech companies running on pure adrenaline.
Yeah, according to the business narratives in our sources, this medical condition maps onto the AI investment landscape with just chilling precision.
Okay, so to diagnose the market, we first have to identify the Xūhuǒ, right? The superficial fire.
Right, the flushing of the cheeks and the racing pulse.
Exactly. What does that look like in the real world?
Well, look at the undeniable surface-level symptoms of the AI industry today. It is burning white hot.
Oh, definitely.
Massive pools of institutional capital are just swarming into literally any startup that manages to put the letters AI in its pitch deck.
Precisely. It's like a magic word right now.
And AI concept stocks are soaring to unprecedented multiples. But perhaps the most glaring symptom of this fever is the cutthroat global war for computing power.
Oh, you mean the scramble for GPUs?
The GPU scramble, yes. Tech giants and startups alike are hoarding graphics processing units like dragons hoarding gold.
It's crazy.
They are spending billions upon billions of dollars just to secure the physical hardware required to train and run these massive language models.
Right. And if your analysis stops at that surface level, the ecosystem looks incredibly prosperous.
Completely.
The sheer velocity of the spending suggests we are in an unstoppable technological revolution.
But then we have to hunt for the Xūhuǒ, the empty foundation, the underlying illness that's actually driving the fever.
The concrete that hasn't been poured at the base of the skyscraper.
Exactly. Because despite these historic cash injections, the industry is suffering from a severe deficiency of clear, profitable business models.
Right.
The actual real-world applications of AI, the specific tools and services that generate reliable, sustainable revenue from end users, they are lagging astronomically behind the capital investments.
Yeah, it's like all investment and very little actual revenue.
The source analysis highlights a specific phrase used in Chinese business media to describe this missing foundation, and that phrase is pseudo-needs.
Pseudo-needs. Interesting.
The argument is that much of the current ecosystem is being propped up almost entirely by cash-burning hype, serving user demands that wouldn't actually exist in a rational, unsubsidized market.
Okay, I actually struggle a bit with dismissing these applications as, pseudo-needs.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, millions of people are genuinely using these AI tools every single day. Enterprise workflows are legitimately being accelerated.
Sure.
Code is being written faster. Customer service bottlenecks are being automated. So calling the whole thing a fake need feels like we might be dismissing an actual undeniable technological leap just because the financials haven't caught up yet.
That's a fair point, but it's actually precisely why the Xūhuǒ metaphor is so surgically accurate here.
Okay, how so?
False heat doesn't mean the body's temperature isn't genuinely elevated.
Right.
The heat is physically there. The underlying technology is undeniably powerful and real, but the specific commercial ecosystem built on top of it is what lacks substance.
Oh, I see.
A pseudo-need in this context often refers to the thousands of derivative wrapper companies.
Oh, the startup's just building a thin user interface on top of someone else's foundational model.
Exactly. Imagine a startup offering an AI service that, say, summarizes long PDF documents.
Right.
They charge the user $5 a month for the service, but the computing cost, the API calls to the foundational model required to generate those summaries, costs the startup $10 a month per user.
So they're losing $5 on every customer.
Right. The venture capital funding is quietly subsidizing that $5 loss, so the user's need for a PDF summarizer only exists because the service is artificially cheap.
Wow. So the moment the venture capital dries up and the startup is forced to charge $15 to actually make a profit.
The user realizes they don't actually need the service that badly.
And the demand just vanishes.
The demand was a mirage created by the subsidy.
That is wild.
The Xūhuǒ framework emphasizes this stark, dangerous contrast between the blind emotional mania of the investors, this feverish excitement of throwing capital at anything AI adjacent, and the actual current capability to monetize the tech sustainably.
So it isolates that massive gap between the heat of the hype and the emptiness of the current business model.
Precisely.
The financial fever is very real, but the commercial health is entirely manufactured.
Yes.
And that creates such an interesting friction with how Western media analyzes the exact same market conditions.
It really does.
I mean, we see these massive valuations and subsidized business models, and we default immediately to the phrase AI bubble. You hear it on financial news networks 20 times a day.
Oh, absolutely.
But unpacking the mechanics of false heat suggests our standard terminology might actually be blinding us to the real danger.
And our source material spends significant time contrasting these two specific frameworks. Understanding the philosophical difference between a bubble and false heat fundamentally shifts how you evaluate systemic economic risk.
Okay, let's examine the Western concept first.
Right, so in Chinese, the direct translation of an economic bubble is 泡沫.
Palmo. And that evokes a very specific visual for us in the West, right? The dot-com bubble, the housing bubble. We picture a literal soap bubble expanding in the air.
Exactly. The core definition of a bubble is that asset prices severely and irrationally deviate from their actual intrinsic value.
Yeah.
The defining characteristic of a bubble is that it is result-oriented and it is static.
Right.
It's simply an entity that exists, stretching thinner and thinner as it expands until it inevitably reaches a mathematical limit of tension.
And then it bursts. It's this catastrophic binary event.
Yeah.
You're either inside the intact bubble making money, or you are standing in the wreckage after the pop.
Exactly. The Chinese concept of false heat, however, is deeply rooted in dynamic biological processes.
Right, the medical stuff.
Unlike a static bubble waiting to burst, false heat is state-oriented. It describes an ongoing, active condition.
So it's a metabolic process.
Yeah.
A fever isn't just an object waiting to explode. It's a state of being that the patient is trapped inside. It's a fever that refuses to break. You know, the danger of the bubble metaphor is that it tricks us into thinking we can outsmart the clock.
Oh, that's a great point.
It turns investing in business strategy into like a high-stakes game of musical chairs. When we use the bubble framework, our entire anxiety is focused just on timing the pop.
Right. We obsess over predicting the exact moment of the crash.
You see financial analysts debating it constantly. Like, are we in a bubble? How many months do we have left before it bursts?
Yeah.
And the underlying assumption there is that the expansion phase, while maybe irrational, is essentially harmless to those participating, provided they manage to exit the market 5 minutes before it pops.
The metaphor implies there's zero damage until the final catastrophic second.
Exactly.
But the bubble frame isolates the danger solely to the endpoint. When you reframe the market condition as Xūhuǒ, as an ongoing, unnatural fever, your entire analytical focus shifts to the ongoing damage.
The ongoing damage.
Because a severe fever that won't break doesn't just suddenly pop and end your life in a single dramatic moment. It slowly, methodically degrades your overall health. Every single hour it persists.
Like, your muscle mass begins to atrophy. Your internal organs are subjected to immense systemic stress.
You become dangerously dehydrated.
Right. The high temperature itself is actively consuming your body's limited resources just to maintain that feverish state.
And applying that biological logic to the commercial narrative reveals why the current AI hype is so destructive.
So it's not just about a crash.
No, the danger isn't just that a massive stock market correction might wipe out portfolios tomorrow. The danger is that every single day this false heat persists. It actively drains the health, talent, and capital of the broader global tech ecosystem.
Oh, wow. How does that ecosystem degradation actually manifest on a daily basis? Like, practically?
Well, think about the allocation of elite human capital.
But, yeah.
You have brilliant software engineers leaving stable, sustainable enterprise software companies, businesses that form the actual backbone of the digital economy.
Right.
Because they are being lured away by massive compensation packages at cash-burning AI startups that have absolutely no viable path to profitability.
Ah, so the talent is being siphoned away from the healthy organs to feed the fever.
Beautifully put, yes. Furthermore, the fever actively distorts the environment for companies that are trying to operate rationally.
What do you mean?
Imagine a healthy tech company that provides a solid, profitable service. Suddenly, all of their venture-backed competitors start rolling out highly subsidized, deeply unprofitable AI features simply to appease their investors and show they're part of the trend.
So the healthy company is now forced to build and support their own unprofitable AI features just to maintain parity in the market.
Right. Otherwise, they look obsolete.
Wow. They are forced to burn their own cash reserves to compete at this feverish, irrational temperature. So the healthy organ catches the fever just by being in the same body.
Exactly. The high temperature makes rational business practices physically impossible to sustain. You stop asking, when will the market crash? And you start asking, how much permanent damage is this ongoing heat inflicting on the supply chain, the labor market, and corporate balance sheets today?
That reframing completely changes how you operate as a professional in this space.
It really does.
Which brings us to the most practical application of this deep dive. How can you, the listener, utilize this framework right now?
That's the most important part.
Right, like when you're reading industry news, analyzing an earnings report, or evaluating a new suite of AI tools for your own company.
Yeah.
How do you become a diagnostic practitioner and spot the false heat?
Well, our source analysis provides incredibly practical vocabulary used by Chinese financial media to urge caution in the market.
Oh, good.
These are common collocations phrases that frequently appear alongside the term Xūhuǒ, and they serve as direct warning signs for investors and executives.
So what is the primary treatment plan they suggest for this condition?
The most prominent phrase is jiangwen, or Xūhuǒ, which translates to cool down or remove the false excitement.
Cool down.
Yeah, in practice, the media uses this to argue that the AI industry desperately needs to artificially suppress this fever and return to the fundamental essence of business profitability.
You know, returning to the essence of business profitability sounds incredibly basic, but in the middle of a hype cycle, it's actually a radical concept.
It is.
It requires ignoring the pressure for infinite, immediate growth.
Exactly. The media is acting as the physician here, warning that if we don't intentionally lower the temperature and force these companies to prove their unit economics, the systemic organ damage to the broader economy will be irreversible.
That is a stark warning. What else?
The second common phrase is a direct behavioral warning. It's jingti de Xūhuǒ, meaning beware of the false heat.
Beware the false heat. It treats the hype cycle as an infectious contagion that you have to actively protect yourself against.
That's a great way to look at it. It's used to caution institutional and retail investors alike against blind trend following.
Right.
It warns against, authorizing massive budgets for a software vendor just because they hastily appended an AI model to their legacy product.
Well, we see that constantly in enterprise software right now. Companies are signing massive multi-year contracts for AI integration just so the CEO can mention AI on their quarterly earnings call.
Exactly. Regardless of whether their employees actually have a practical use for the tools.
They've caught the false heat.
Which leads to the final crucial phrase, tuishao, meaning the fever subsides.
The fever subsides.
The narrative here argues that only when capital gradually becomes rational again and the false heat drops, will we be able to see which enterprises actually possess true, enduring value.
It's like Warren Buffett says, when the tide goes out, you see who is swimming naked.
Exactly.
Or in this case, when the fever breaks, you finally see who is actually healthy.
Right.
So, synthesizing all of this into actionable advice for you listening. To spot the false heat, you must actively train yourself to ignore the flushed red face of the market. Ignore the soaring stock charts, the perfectly polished social media demo videos, and the breathless press releases claiming a new parameter count like changes the fabric of reality.
That is all just the superficial radiation of the fever.
You must purposefully hunt for the Xū, the underlying deficiency.
When you are presented with a new AI platform or a pitch deck, you have to ask the grounded, boring questions.
Yeah. Is this organization generating actual profit? Or are they quietly subsidizing every single user interaction with a mountain of venture capital?
Are normal, non-technical people utilizing this tool in their daily workflows to solve persistent problems, or is it a localized pseudo-need that generates engagement on social media but zero recurring revenue?
Right. Are they constructing a mathematically sound business architecture, or are they simply gathering more expensive fuel to throw onto a completely uncontained fire?
Adopting this specific vocabulary does far more than just give you an interesting anecdote for your next strategy meeting.
It physically rewires your internal risk assessment algorithm.
It really does.
It stops you from being mesmerized by the sheer scale of the fire and forces you to inspect the foundational concrete.
It trains your analytical mind to recognize that intense activity and robust health are rarely the same thing in a commercial ecosystem.
So, to bring our journey full circle today, we've taken a deep dive into an ancient Chinese medical concept, Xūhuǒ, or false heat, and applied it to the bleeding edge of global technology.
We've explored how this dynamic, state-oriented lens provides a vastly superior and, frankly, more accurate framework for diagnosing the modern AI investment craze than our default static idea of an economic bubble.
It completely strips away that paralyzing anxiety of trying to time a sudden market pop and it replaces it with the vigilant, ongoing observation of systemic health and structural integrity.
You are now equipped with a potent critical thinking tool to separate the superficial burning fire of market hype from the foundational, unsubstantiated emptiness of unproven business models.
You can look past the soaring valuations and demand evidence of actual, sustainable commercial value.
And that framework leaves us with one final, profound implication to consider as you watch the tech industry maneuver through the coming months.
What's that?
Well, if we accept the premise of this diagnostic framework, if we agree that the global artificial intelligence sector is currently enduring a severe, prolonged case of false heat, rather than simply expanding inside a fragile soup bubble, we have to acknowledge the biological reality of a fever. A fever does eventually break.
Right.
The capital markets will eventually exhaust their adrenaline, and cold rationality will return to the ecosystem. But when a physical body or a global economy suffers through a severe, artificially prolonged fever, it does not simply wake up the next morning fully recovered.
The sheer stress of the heat leaves a mark.
Exactly. So when the fever of this historic AI boom finally breaks, what kind of permanent economic scar tissue, what deep-seated systemic weaknesses will this prolonged cash-burning illness leave behind on the global market?
What structural damage is being done right now that we won't fully understand until the temperature returns to normal? Keep questioning the surface narratives, hunt for the solid foundations, and always remember, just because an industry is glowing red hot doesn't mean it isn't completely hollow on the inside. Catch you on the next deep dive.